Hey all, this is Shrankar. I'm an Ele Shaman main for Roulette on Sargeras. Now today I was looking through MMO Champion, and I found this thread asking for Ele Shaman DPS help. So I thought this would make a good video. I'd go through this guy's logs here, Xanzqt on Kel'Thuzad, and kind of point out some things that he may be doing incorrectly and some things that he could do to fix his DPS issues. So to start, I went through and took a look at his logs. See that he's pulling 42 on Savara, 36 on Ashara, 29 on Behemoth, and 42 on Ashvane. So right from here, I look at Savara and Ashvane being his stronger kills. So that's kind of where I started to see what his issues are. So I pull up the, say, Savara one. First thing I'm going to look at is his gearing setup. Usually, whenever you look for a shaman that's having issues, the biggest thing is going to be gear. So, go to our Xanzqt over here and hit summary. And from here, you can see what he's using. So for this, he's got 3 Ignis Potential, a Natural Harmony, Swirling Sands, and Ancestral Resonance. Now, Ancestral Resonance isn't that good. That being said, I've seen that he has replaced these shoulders, so Azerite's not an issue. He's got 450s of all 3. This Loa Blessed chest guard's actually best in slot. This is nearly best in slot, so Azerite's good. Next thing I'd look at is he using Benthic? And you come down and see, waist, he is not. Feet, no Benthic. That's a big one. The feet are a big DPS increase because of that 2% extra crit damage. And then wrist and hands are both non-Benthic. So, that being said, he's missing a lot of DPS out there. Come down to his trinkets, he's got Leviathan's Lure, that's best in slot, so there's not much he can do about that other than getting a Mythic version, which, I mean, myself, I had a hard time getting, so I understand that. Not getting the right trinkets. The other one he has is the Alchemist Stone with socket, which, well, they all have sockets, but yeah. Alchemist Stone isn't a very strong trinket at the moment, and I actually went through and did a few sims, first to see the comparison between his gear and my own gear. So let's see, that is here. Do a quick stat weight sim. See, his sims for about 46,000. Now that's relatively low compared to what I'm simming for personally, 54,000. And so if you think about it, if he just were to fix his gear, now I'm not saying he'd get that extra 8,000 DPS total, but you could probably get an extra 4,000 pretty easily, maybe 6,000 pretty easily. If that's all you fix, think about putting, well, let's say you could get the full 8,000. Think about, because that's basically what he's comparing himself to. You look at a log, and these parses, you're comparing yourself to all shamans. So the highest logs are going to be the shamans with the best gear. Also, who played best, but gearing is a big issue in this game. So if he were to get an extra 8,000 DPS, that puts Savara and Ashvane both at 50k DPS, which turn out to be pretty decent logs. So going through that, looking through just getting the Benthics, I did a Droptimizer on that sim, and looking at if you were to get Benthics with sockets, it's really what you're trying to get. Without a socket, you're probably looking at about 200 DPS, 250 DPS less. So getting something like even the Benthic treads without sockets is going to be something like 700 DPS. With socket, 900 DPS increase over what he has now. That's pretty massive. Also, bracers, a lot harder to get, but if you get the right ones, 700 DPS upgrade. Girdle's real easy, because there's only two of them that you can get. And honestly, but either one of them with socket's going to help him. Because right now he is progressing on Orgoza. And so the Orgoza belt, the Aberration belt's great for that. And even the Vim's Scale Crush is going to give you a DPS increase. So then the gauntlets would also be, relatively sizable DPS increase. So these are increases just from what he has currently. So if he's just to replace a single piece. Now, the way that gear works is every new piece of gear that you get is going to increase the DPS of your next piece of gear by more. So say he got the Mythic treads, now the bracers, girdle, and gauntlets, if you were to get those next, would all be a bigger DPS increase than just what you see here. It's a multiplicative value. So, benthics are a big deal. I also checked the relative value of his alchemist stone versus the highborn compendium of storms. This is a really easy one to get. You buy it off the auction house for like maybe 5k at most, and it's an extra 166 DPS. Not a huge upgrade, but when you think about what he has here, he's got a alchemist stone which has 200 versatility on it. Go back to his stat weights. Now stat weight for versatility is already his highest stat weight. So by removing 200 versatility and still increasing his DPS by 166, that's going to create this versatility stat weight to be even higher. So potentially he could go through and regem a lot of his gemmed gear for versatility, and that would probably push him even higher DPS increase just from that one trinket and a few gems. Gems are cheap too. Like you're talking like maybe 50 gold a gem. So it's a very small amount of extra cash, extra gold to increase your DPS, and you don't have to change any of your playstyle. Alright, then the last thing that I see is he's using World Vein Resonance for a lot of these fights. Now this one has Purification Protocol, most likely because he was still doing progression. That does extra damage to aberrations, which isn't a bad one to use. That being said, this World Vein Resonance, while it sims really well, doesn't actually work too well in practice. And we can see that by going to the logs. Alright, so this is Savara. We go to buffs, and I'll go ahead and clear that out. You go to, Xanzqt first. Usually I'll go to damage done and pick Xanzqt from the list there. So that's just him. We go to buffs now. Scroll down. Now on buffs, there's a few things we look at. He does a good job of using his potions, and Unbridled Fury is the correct potion to use, so great. He's flasked and fed, also great. But now we want to look at Lifeblood. That's the point of why we're going here. So we see Lifeblood procs 12 times. He's got a 62% ratio of using it. So if we take a look at it, he's apparently not stacking with anybody else that has Lifeblood, so it's just him. He's only getting a single stack. Now, a single stack of Lifeblood at 60%, 62% is relatively low damage. We can do a little bit of napkin math here to get this to work. So a single stack of Lifeblood is going to be 252 int. So what you want to do is you want to take that and you multiply it by the amount of stacks. Since it's only one, it's times 1. Then you multiply it by the percentage of time that it's up, so 62%. which would be 0.62. So on average, he's going to have 156 int over the course of the fight from this Lifeblood Azurite Essence. Now to see the relative value of that, we have to look at his stat weights. So coming back to his stat weights, we see that Intellect has about 2.7, is worth about 2.7 DPS per point of Intellect. Now this isn't a perfect way of doing it, but it does get you a relative value. That's pretty close. So we multiply this 156 int, which is the average amount of int that he gets for that fight, by his intellect stat weight. And you see over the course of the fight, it's worth about 420 DPS. Now, if you go to look at the blood mallets for minor essences, you'll see that 400 DPS is really low compared to the other options. And those don't even take into consideration the kind of gear that we're wearing now. So something like Conflict and Strife probably be at least 1500 DPS, as well as the haste proc from Meme Beam. I forget what the name of that one is. But so if you were to just switch to Conflict and Strife rank 3, that'd be, about a little over 1000 DPS just from doing that. His other option would be, of course, the haste buff from the Meme Beam one, and that would be around the same. Honestly, he'd get more value out of Conflict and Strife because his versatility is so high. So that is both what I normally recommend, because for most shamans, that's going to be your best best minor. But in his case, it's going to be even more effective because of the high versatility stat weight. So with all of that, he could pretty easily increase his DPS without even touching what he's doing as a shaman. So with that in mind, we're going to go to gameplay advice, because he's, of course, asking, hey, look through my logs and see what I'm doing wrong, which most likely means that he wants to know what he can do gameplay-wise to fix things. Now, normally for shamans, my best advice to a new shaman would be ignore Master of the Elements procs and ignore using Ice Fury on cooldown. The reason for this is Master of the Elements, micromanaging it to its full effectiveness, only gives about 1% extra damage. Really not a lot. However, going through and using it completely correctly is going to be a lot of extra concentration that you have to do. And there is a good chance, especially for a new shaman who's still kind of getting down the rotation, there's a good chance that you're going to actually lose DPS by concentrating on the wrong things. Now, as far as Ice Fury, you use it as a filler ability, basically. You don't really need to go through and maximize the cooldown usage on that, because a lot of times, so Ice Fury and the empowered Frost Shock procs are actually going to be doing less damage than a Lava Burst proc, or a Lava Burst cast. Which means that you really only want to use Ice Fury and the empowered Frost Shocks in place of a Lightning Bolt, because just about anything else you cast is going to do more damage than those spells. So a lot of times you'll end up dropping a empowered Ice Fury proc, like letting it expire, in order to make use of all of your Lava Burst procs and make use of Stormkeeper and other things like that. So I find that using Ice Fury to its maximum tends to be a trap that a lot of people will end up doing. Um, so it's best just to ignore that, just to use it in place of lightning bolts. Now, to get into the logs themselves, he wanted us to look through the logs and go ahead and give him advice on what he's specifically doing wrong. So I looked through them. There's a few things that I would recommend. So the first thing I'd recommend is to go to your casts. And from here, we see that, well, he tends to use Frost Shock a lot. Like, this should be much, much lower. If you look, Ice Fury is being used 7 times in this fight, which means you're going to have 28, 4 times 7, empowered Frost Shock charges, and he uses it just about 2 times as much as that. So it's clearly going to be an issue here. Other than that, he's using a lot of lava bursts. He is filling with lightning bolts, which is good. Flame shock uptime is near perfect, so that's good. So from here, you can kind of see that Frost Shock is an issue. Went through and checked his other encounters. They all look pretty much the same, with Radiance of Shara being the big one, where he actually uses Frost Shock more than he uses Lava Burst. So that becomes a pretty big issue. Frost Shock does very little damage, and if it's not empowered, you don't want it in your rotation. Only time you'd really use Frost Shock, other than when it's empowered, is when you're moving and you don't have a instant cast Lava Burst or an Earth Shock to use, or even just refreshing your Flame Shock. So from there, go ahead and bring his log into WoW Analyzer to kind of take a look at what he's doing. We'll look at overview first. So their checklist, use core abilities as often as possible. Let's see, we have Stormkeeper on cooldown, it's good. Fire Elemental on cooldown, good. And Ice Fury, not quite on cooldown, not a big deal. Minimize downtime. You see he's got 10% downtime, which honestly is pretty good. He's doing a pretty decent job of that. With 6% of his cast cancelled, now this is Ash Vein where stuff spawns underneath your feet, there's a lot of movement, so you will have some cancelled casts. It's almost something you can't get around. Let's see, now maintain Flame Shock. His uptime is good, but his refreshes seem to be an issue here, and we'll take a look at that. His totem uptime's good, so no problem there. The only thing is he may be refreshing his totems too often, but that's a relatively minor issue. And I would ignore the utilize all Ice Fury stacks. Like I said, there's going to be times where you get, say, too many Lava Burst procs, and you just can't fit all those Frost Shocks within the Ice Fury empowerment window. Not a big deal. So then we go to the timeline, see what he's doing. Now the first thing I want to look at is these Flame Shocks. You see, first Flame Shocks right when the fight starts, and the next one is in red here. It tells you, which basically tells you that you're using it before the pandemic window, which is that last 7 seconds or 25% of the Flame Shock uptime. This is with all dots and HOTS as well. Works the same way. So what you want to do is you want to refresh it within that last 7 seconds. So this says Flame Shock was refreshed 2 seconds early, which isn't too bad. I mean, just a little bit early, but let's see what some of the other ones are. This one was refreshed on time, good. This one looks like it was refreshed on time as well. So here we have another one that seems to be an issue. If we hover over it, it should pop up. This one was cast 3 seconds before the pandemic window. This next one was cast 2 seconds before it. So it seems to be a pretty consistent issue. I did look at some of his other fights as well, and it seems to pop up there too. So one thing that I would suggest is to cast your Flame Shock about a second or two later. And it'll help a little bit. It is rather minor because he's only clipping it by a little bit. He might end up getting an extra few globals over the course of a fight. Granted, that is some more damage, but it is relatively minor. So the next thing I want to look at is Frost Shock usage, because it seems to be real high. So, let's see. Our first Frost Shock is within an Ice Fury window. See, Ice Fury was cast. Here is the empowered window all the way up to this point. He uses 3 of them. He tries to use the last one, but it is outside of the empowered windows. This one actually is unempowered. So a problem that I see pretty often. I do it myself, and it's one of the reasons why I say, hey, don't worry about using all of those Frost Shocks, because he would have been better off just using an extra Lightning Bolt in place here. It happens. It's a minor issue, but it does happen. He's got another Frost Shock here outside of the Ice Fury window, which most likely is just used for movements. He uses an Earth Shock before it and Totem Mastery before that, so if he's using Totem Mastery, he's most likely moving and resetting his totems. Instacast, and then he does another hard cast. So that's not too bad. It's better to use Frost Shock than nothing, and just leaving this blank. So that is good. Let's see, the next one, we got another Ice Fury here, and a Frost Shock directly after that. So there's 2 of them, 3 of them. And so looks like he used 3 empowered Frost Shocks within that Ice Fury empowerment window. But here we go. Here's another 1, 2, 3 Frost Shocks in a row. Which, honestly, it looks like a lot of these are used for movement. It's good that he's casting while moving, but this could mean an issue with moving prior to when an ability happens. So you really want to use, say, these Earth Shocks and Instacast Lava Bursts to move and pre-position yourself to where the tank's going to pull the boss, or pre-position yourself so that you can soak an orb that's coming in for Ashvane. That way you don't have to spend 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 globals in a row of instacasts, 3 of which are unempowered Frost Shocks. Another Frost Shock to Ice Fury to Frost Shock. So I'm not sure. This looks a little suspicious. Maybe it was movement, but maybe at the same time he's trying to maximize that Master of Elements usage. If that was the case, you wouldn't want to cast a Frost Shock here. You'd want this to be a Lightning Bolt. That being said, I wouldn't worry about it too much, and I'd most likely just cast Lava Burst into Ice Fury. That way he's using his Ice Fury a little quicker, comes back quicker, and he can go straight into those Frost Shocks. Within that window, he uses 3 of them. Again, he's trying to get that 4th one, but he's clipping it. This again could be movement, but this also could be him trying to wait for a Lava Burst charge to come up, which isn't bad, especially for Stormkeeper. That is one of the things that I would say, hey, micromanage for Master of the Elements, is making sure that a Stormkeeper Lightning Bolt does get the Lava Burst before it. So then he finally casts the Ice Fury. He's got Frost Shock, 1, 2, 3, and again, Frost Shock out of the empowered. So for him, the not casting all 4 Frost Shocks is going to help him quite a bit. Because that could have been a lightning bolt for about twice the damage. And kind of more of the same. I'm not sure what's going on here. He casts Lava Burst into 2 Frost Shocks and then an Earthquake. So it almost seems like the bubbles are coming out and he's trying to not overcap his Maelstrom. That being said, he'd still be better off just overcapping Maelstrom, casting 2 lightning bolts in there, and then popping an Earthquake down. You'd end up doing more damage. And since Frost Shock doesn't give you any Maelstrom, it'd be the same thing as overcapping. It's really not that big of a deal. The other thing you could do is, depending on where these bubbles come out, if say they come out here within this time frame and then he's dropping Earthquake, well, he could just drop the Earthquake a second early. Then start, and if he's, capped at Maelstrom here, which most likely is what he's doing, you cast Lava Burst into an Earthquake instead of the Frost Shock. Then within about a second, bubbles come out, I'm assuming. You cast another Chain Lightning, and that would bring you back up to another 60. You'd have enough for another Earthquake. And then, let's see, he's got another Earthquake here, so most likely bubbles are out around somewhere around here. He's got enough time to cast 3 Chain Lightnings in there, so he could have had 3 Earthquakes instead of 2. Basically, skip these Frost Shocks completely and put out significantly more damage. Let's see, probably another set of movements. Use the Health Stones, so maybe a little panic there. Maybe gets hit by something. This honestly could be him getting knocked up. Frost Shock on the way down, and Health Stoning to pop himself back up. Let's see, and again, 3 Frost Shocks within the empowerment window, 1 outside of it. So, see, that's a consistent issue. So yeah, I would say one of his biggest issues gameplay-wise is using his Frost Shocks correctly. Using them too much, as you see on this Radiance of Shara, was a very low parse, and he's using it way too much. Which means he's either not positioning himself well when he does have, say, an instant-cast Lava Burst up, or an instant-cast Earth Shock, or he could just be new to this. It looks like he's got 1 kill on each. I'm not sure if that's an alt or not. So he may be worried about getting knocked up by the tornadoes. But that would be something to work on. 2 more things. One minor thing is he's casting Earth Elemental. I believe that was on the Commander Savara fight. Let's see, if we go to casts, we bring out Earth Elemental here, hit the plus, you see exactly where in the fight he's casting that. You see it's after the fight starts, like right in his opener. You can also see that if you go to the WoW Analyzer, and we'll pull up Savara, click on him, and go to the timeline again. So you see, he precast Stormkeeper, good. The first cast is Flame Shock. I'm not 100% sure here if he's casting a Lava Burst into Flame Shock, which should be how you kind of open that up, because you get that extra Lava Burst. It can be precast in the air while the timers finishes. Then he goes Guardian of Azeroth into Earth Elemental. Now instead, he could use the Earth Elemental before the pull, just like he's using Stormkeeper. So what I usually do is I'll Stormkeeper around 8 seconds, I'll Earth Elemental around 4 or 5 seconds. And to do that, you need to untarget the boss, because if you use Earth Elemental While it's targeted, it'll just run out and pull early. It's very annoying, but that's how it works. So if you untarget it and then precast that, you get another global here, which could be another 40k damage. Not a huge issue, but as Earth Elemental only does about 50k over the course of the fight, you're basically gaining an extra global. It's free damage, and he wanted to know a few things that could help him. The next thing that I see, we're going to go back to Warcraft logs to look at this. On the Behemoth fight, we're going to go to damage done and look specifically at Flame Shock. And so you see he's got 10 Flame Shocks over the course of the fight, which is kind of low. I believe when looking, uptime is low, 80%. However, there is the times when the Behemoth runs, and you can't redot him. One thing to do there is to refresh that dot right before the Behemoth swims away, right as he's getting to that 100 energy. But that's rather minor. I wouldn't worry too much about it. But what I do see off of this is that he's only used it one time on pufferfish, most likely on the very first pufferfish. Because seeing as how long it lasts, or how much damage it does, only 16k, most likely that only got a few ticks. So what I would normally do is I will start on Behemoth. I'd kind of ignore the first pufferfish, but you could start with your Flame Shock on Behemoth and then throw your Stormkeepered lightning bolts in pufferfish if your raid wants you to burst that down a little faster. Then once you get the buff, you swim over to the other side, to the other pufferfish, and make sure that you keep that Flame Shock up on both pufferfish and Behemoth. That increases the amount of damage overall that you do because you're now dotting more things, and Flame Shock does a lot of damage per cast. As you see here, for him, 71k versus, say, an Earth Shock even, it's only 57k. So it's going to do more damage than your highest hitting Maelstrom ability. Lava Burst 40k. So having that extra Flame Shock for a single global is really nice. But it also gives you more Lava Burst casts, which will allow you to do even more damage to Behemoth himself. So if you're worried about boss damage, that's going to improve your boss damage as well as improve your overall damage. So that's kind of a big one that he's missing out on. I did see in his Orgoza progression that he does a decent job of Flame Shocking the ads. I didn't look too deeply into it. You can get up to 2 to 3 Flame Shocks out within that window. So I'm not sure if he's getting all of that or not, but he's at least Flame Shocking an ad each time, which is good. It's increasing his damage through extra lava bursts. So not so much of an issue there. So I know this is kind of a long video. We went through all the things that he can kind of improve on. Biggest things are gears, the gear that he uses, and the essences that he's using. And then his Frost Shock usage seems to be the big ones. A few other issues, but if he just fixed those, he would easily go up by 5k DPS or more. Especially if he fixed all of the gear problems. But so we're going to go ahead and post letting him know. So hopefully he can fix a few of these things and increase his damage for the raid. So this is my first time doing one of these log reviews as a video. I think it could be kind of helpful to look through other people's logs and kind of find out issues that they're doing, because a lot of times they're common for just about everyone. So if you guys like this video and want to see more of these, let me know, either in the comments or put a like on the video. Subscribe if you're new and you want to see more of this kind of stuff. Thanks for watching. hopefully I'll be doing some more of these because it was kind of fun.